Hey guys, Monochrome here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Genuinely good to have you. So, the original pilot survival knife. I have seen so many misconceptions about this classic model, and I decided it would be best to address all of them. I have seen videos here and there that talk about one misconception with regard to one feature, but never one that talked about all of it. So I'm going to do that in this video. Now, shortly after this knife came out, when it became available on the civilian market, this knife, along with the K-bar knife, were the two knives most recommended to outdoorsmen, campers, you name it. If it had anything to do with the woods, those were the two knives at the top of everyone's list. Well, there's a reason for that. I mean, keep in mind that back then, there weren't a ton of great offerings that you could pick from. There really weren't. Your selection was very, very limited, and this guy was considered one of the better ones. The problem is, even though it's adequate for outdoor use in the wilderness, it really wasn't designed for that. It's literally in the name, pilot survival knife. This is something that was standard issue to pilots, and if they went down, it enabled them to survive. And not just this knife, they were issued other gear for that purpose. So let's take a look as to why this was originally issued. And yes, I know there is a newer version that is better. However, this was the original. It's the one I have, so let's take a closer look. Starting with the sheath, I've had about 3 examples of the pilot survival knife, and the snap has always been excellent. No exception on this one. Let's take the knife out, and we're going to set it aside just for now and take a look at the sheath. As you can see, it's leather. There is a sharpening stone pouch, and that snap is also excellent. Now, the sharpening stone isn't big, it's not very impressive, but it will definitely get the job done. I mean, please keep in mind that the pilot survival knife is a carbon steel knife, so a stone like this one will get the job done. Put a little water on here, maybe some spit if that's what you have, and taking the stone in and out of the pouch is definitely easier when the knife is out of the sheath. Now, the thing I really like is that even from back in the day, and this is a modern day example, but it's still the same old design. You see reinforced stitching, and it's reinforced in several spots. One of the things I absolutely hate about modern day sheaths is that the best way to tell if you're getting something that's quality and really worth the high price tag, if the stitching is reinforced, as it is here with these rivets. But a lot of times you will see leather sheath, one after the other, stitched together, not even two rivets at the start and end of the stitching in order to reinforce it. I absolutely hate that. When I see something that looks like a quality leather sheath and all it has is stitching all around to hold it in place, no, no. It has to be reinforced, at least a couple of rivets. This has several, so I definitely like that. Now, the original first production run of the Pilot's survival knife did not have this black plastic reinforcement on the back or the bottom. It was just all leather with a couple of lanyard holes a bit closer together than what you see here. Now, I have heard a lot of people come up with some wacky reasons as to why this black plastic portion is there. There's only one reason. When you make a knife sheath for a fixed blade knife out of leather, the more a person carries and uses it, especially in harsh environments, the tip of the knife is going to start wearing through the bottom of the leather. So when it became clear that was a problem, you ended up with this black, thin, hard plastic reinforcement. That's the only reason why it's there. Don't let someone tell you otherwise. Let's move on to the knife itself. Here it is. Let's start with the butt of the knife. As you can see, nice and solid. Is that going to be useful for pounding in tent stakes? Well, yes. But if you're a pilot and you go down and you're trapped in your aircraft and you need to bust your way out, that hammer comes in very handy. Now, granted, inside the cockpit of a plane, there isn't going to be a lot of room to move around. But still, if there's a piece of metal preventing you from escaping and you can push against it, would you rather use this or your hands? Why damage your hands? Going down, stacked leather washer handle. Makes for a good grip. Further down, you have this double cross guard with two lashing holes on either end. In a really bad situation, if you can't find anything to use in order to make a spear, you can actually lash your knife using these holes and, well, lashing material such as string, paracord, obviously thick, tough string. you can make this into a spear, but it is usually best to take your primary knife and use that to make a spear rather than using this as the spear itself. Because if you throw this at an animal and the animal is wounded and it takes off running, well, you've lost your knife. Not good. But you do have that option. Now, this is one of the biggest misconceptions right here, the spine of the blade. One of the things I absolutely hate when it comes to advertising from flashlight manufacturers, they will claim that the aluminum they use is aircraft grade aluminum. Yeah, that's marketing BS. Because when you take a look at planes made back then and planes made now, you realize that they're put together from different grades and types of aluminum. And there are parts of a plane that are going to be made from thick pieces of aluminum, but there are also going to be parts of a plane made from very thin pieces of aluminum. It actually varies. So the term aircraft grade aluminum is marketing BS, because there are several grades of aluminum that are actually used in making aircraft. Now this right here, this sawback, I've heard some people mention, oh, that's a root saw. Well, yes, you can use it as such, but that's not really why it's there. Some will say, oh, that's for notching traps, like a figure 4 trap, in order to catch animals, skin them, eat them. Well, you can definitely use the sawback for notching your traps. That's not what it's there for. Here's what it's actually there for. Yes, this is a saw. This is there so that if a downed pilot is trapped in his plane, he can use the saw to literally saw his way out of his plane. Again, the name of the knife tells you what all of the features are designed for. And this saw, that's designed for literally sawing your way out of a downed aircraft. Again, different grades of aircraft grade aluminum. Some of them very thin, very easy to saw through. Now, here on both sides, and it's a little easier to see on this side, we have this blood groove, which is a huge, huge misnomer. No, blood grooves aren't there for you to stab someone with your survival knife and, oh, there's a vacuum effect in their body, so we're gonna cut some grooves on either side of the knife to make it easier to pull the knife out. No, no, no. These are fullers. They are there to lighten the weight of the knife a bit. And when you're a pilot in a cockpit, every ounce counts. So this helps to lighten the weight. Also, when it comes to the sheath and you have your knife inserted, this can be surprisingly difficult to pull out. And there is a possibility that these fullers on either side help with that, because they create a bit of a gap on either side to help you pull the knife out of the sheath, not out of the body of a person. This is not a fighting knife. This is a purpose-made survival knife. You have the cutting edge, which is shorter by a couple of inches compared to the K-bar knife. Again, that's because these were issued to pilots, and the length of a K-bar knife in a cramped cockpit, not going to work. On older models, this false edge was actually thinner, so that if you wanted to, you could use the sharpening stone to sharpen that up. On the current newer models, yeah, it's a little bit too thick for that. But as you guys can see, this really wasn't made for campers, backpackers, but back in the day, it was recommended for them for all sorts of outdoorsmen, because really, when it came to knives that you could buy off the shelf, there really wasn't a huge selection back when this thing first hit the civilian market. And going back to the hammer on the end, if you were a down pilot and you were injured, this is something you could use with tent pegs made using this knife, and if you had some sort of covering, yeah, you could use this to make a stealth tent, a very basic one, and wait for rescue. Once again, pilots were issued other gear. One of those included a radio with a homing beacon. So if you were shot down behind enemy lines, thankfully you weren't on your own. And no, this hammer was not designed for bashing enemy soldiers in the back of the head and killing them. Again, not a fighting knife. This is a survival knife. And while it can be pressed into service as a good wilderness camp knife, especially nowadays, there are so many better choices. So many. But overall, if you like what you see here, you can use it for the outdoors. But please keep in mind, this is a purpose-built knife, and it wasn't purposely built for use in the outdoors. So I hope that takes care of some of the misconceptions regarding this classic design. As usual, guys, specs in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys soon. Please continue to take care. Please continue to stay safe out there. Unfortunately, it's still dangerous.